Perfect.
Excited.
All right, Joe, it's all you.
All right. This is the Do Better podcast with Dr. Megan Miller and Joe Smith, launching you into the future of behavior analysis.
Welcome to the Do Better podcast. In today's episode, we are discussing behavior analysis abroad with Nipa Bhuptani. This is Megan.
And this is Joe.
This is where we blast off to the final frontier of improving ourselves in the field of behavior analysis. Thank you for spending time with us. Now let us begin.
All right. So we are here with Megan Miller and Nipa. And how is everyone doing?
Well, it's bright and sunny here in Abu Dhabi, and so I'm doing great. Thank you.
I am doing well too.
Awesome. Now, when you say bright and sunny, are you talking about bright and sunny in the 90s or like bright and sunny in the 70s?
We do centigrade here, so I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it is hot. So it is about.
It's hot.
Yeah, it's hot is what I would say. Although this is just the start of the summer here, so I mean, relatively, we could say it's not too bad if we're living here, but I think, yeah, for other people, it is hot.
Yeah, I've been to the UAE in April, like mid-April, and I struggled. And I live in Florida, so like, I can only imagine what it's like after that.
Yeah, it's going to be hard during like Corona times. We've been okay because we've been able to go be outside until now, but I'm dreading the next 3 months now where we will have to be indoors, and that's always harder to do with Corona.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, and it's like the opposite here, where
in
the winter time, that's what the big concern was, because it's so cold out, everybody's inside. But
yeah. Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I can only imagine. Now, like for me, like I like it being 70, and that's what I think is like the perfect temp. Like, so 70 would be a nice, you can be outside in jeans type of weather.
Right. Yeah. Like California type of weather.
Yeah.
That's usually around December over here is what you would get that.
Okay, so definitely a flight to Dubai in December. So awesome. I'll do that.
All right, Joe, we didn't ask you. You asked how we're doing. How are you doing? You good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just keeping busy and making sure my taxes are done on time. So that's coming up.
I had to request an extension. I always have to. I don't know why. Yeah. There's just something about the springtime. I just can't get it together. I don't know.
It's a busy time for us. It's like summer's coming, and then we just get slammed with I know for me, like I get slammed with treatment plans to update.
Yeah.
We usually have like end of year reports and and enrolling new clients for September or like contracts. So that takes up our time during this time of the year.
Yes. Busy. I'm trying to figure out.
I just wanted to also add that this has been Eid weekend. So today's the last day. We go back to work tomorrow, but it was Eid here. So wishing everybody Eid Mubarak for everyone who's listening here. And we've had a quiet Ramadan and a quiet Eid.
We have a few people watching us, and sorry, I got distracted by seeing people comment on Facebook. Eid Mubarak. Thank you for bringing that up, Nipa. I know that's a really special time, although it's been a little bit different this year for many reasons. We have a couple of people saying hi on Facebook Live. So we have Monica saying hi from Abu Dhabi, and Bindu saying hi from India, and Leslie saying hi from Oklahoma. So we have people watching from all over the place right now.
Hi everyone. Hi Bindu. Good to have you here, and Monica and Leslie. Hi.
All right, so let's dive into our actual interview. I'm thrilled to be recording this episode. Nipa, you're one of my favorite behavior analysts in the UAE. And I know that may sound like, well, how many behavior analysts do you know in the UAE? But I actually know quite a few. So I had the pleasure of meeting Nipa in person several years ago when our mutual friend, Michelle Kelly, had me join her in attending Nipa's Diwali party in Abu Dhabi. And it was so fun because it was Michelle from Ireland, myself and Claire from Virginia, and Melody, who Claire knew from Florida, but is also Haitian. So we had like all of these different folks in Abu Dhabi at a Diwali party. It was just like such an interesting like meeting of people from all around the world. And it was one of my most favorite just events that I've ever been to. The food was incredible and it was so nice to meet everyone. But in addition to the personal social piece, I've admired Nipa's work from afar. So it was a real treat to meet you and celebrate the wonderful holiday together. The other time that I saw you in Abu Dhabi was actually in Dubai. It wasn't in Abu Dhabi. I had the opportunity to go to your office in Dubai. And I think Ryan was with us on that trip.
That's
I can't
right.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you showed us, I remember like you getting out like the different binders for the competent learner model. And it was so organized and I was just like geeking out. I just like, I want to just stay here and watch you do all of this stuff. I'm so excited for everyone who's watching on Facebook Live and who's listening to the podcast to learn more about the unique and advanced applications of our science that Nipa is making. Before we dive into that, Nipa, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? You could go as far back as you want. If you want to keep it focused on behavior analysis, that's fine. But just, a little bit about how you got into the field and who you are.
Sure. So, yes, Megan, I remember that Diwali party. And I mean, I just wanted to say that that's Abu Dhabi. That is UAE, really. It's like it's a cauldron of mixed cultures. Living here, we get to experience so many different people from all different walks of life and from different parts of life. And I am so very grateful that I have this opportunity to live here since 1991. So it's been almost 30 years now. And I have enjoyed living here, and I have enjoyed the exposure that me and my family have had to the variety of people in this country. So very grateful for that. And the second thing you said was like, how many behavior analysts would there be in UAE? I just looked up today. And as per the board, there are 27 active BCABAs, 132 active BCBAs, and 331 RBTs.
Wow.
So there's a total of 489 board certified people active in UAE. So that's a huge number. Yep. And I say that because I was the first person to sit the exam from UAE. I know that Smita, I was too used to live here, and she did her pass her exam while living here, but I think she registered from India. So on the list, there wasn't United Arab Emirates, and I had to write to them to create that for me. So that was the first person there. And today we're at 489. So woohoo, that's just absolutely amazing. And it's not such a long time. I mean, it is a long time ago for me, but it's not such a long time ago for the field. I sat the exam in 2008. So it's not that long for a 489,000% growth.
Yeah. Wow, that is incredible.
Yes.
Thank you for pulling that information for us.
Yeah, I was just, I was curious today because when I was thinking of what I'm going to say, and I was like, okay, I was number one, and where are we now? And it's wow. So yeah,
that's grown quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my story. So before I moved to Abu Dhabi, I actually graduated my bachelor's with economics. I had nothing to do with behavior analysis at that point of time. Then I was living in India, and I went on to open a boutique. Clothes design was something that I was doing. So completely different from where I am now. And then my husband and I moved to Abu Dhabi, and 1991, things were very, very small, and there was not much potential as to practice economics or clothes design in Abu Dhabi. And so by default, I used to love kids, and I still do. And so I was offered a job in early education in a British school over here. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's fun. And so that's how I entered education. I stayed an early education teacher for 13 years and loved it completely. But literally from the first year, my first student that came in with additional needs was in the first year of as I was working. And I had no idea, I had no clue. All I knew was that she needed more than what I could offer, and I had to do more. And so that's where this journey began. And I kind of, I asked mom if she would send her home to me so that I could work with her extra hours at home. Mom used to bring her to my house, and we were trying to figure it out together. It was challenging in those days because, access to information wasn't great. The UAE was a small country. There weren't many universities here where I could access people to ask for help. So it was trial and error on my own and reading from wherever I could. So that was 1992. And then, went on for 13 years, kept looking at what I could learn more, because I liked early education, but very quickly found that it wasn't as gratifying. It was easy, and I needed to do something more. I needed something more challenging and I kept getting drawn to children who needed more. Autism at that point in UAE was not even heard of. People didn't know what it was. People didn't understand what it was. There was an acceptance, cultural, social, everything was very, very much just beginning. And I'd say around 2002 or 3, I stumbled upon Dr. Patrick McGreevy's workshop in Dubai.
Oh,
can you believe that? Yes, he did a
wow.
2-day workshop in Dubai, and I was like, wow. I had no
what
idea.
What was he presenting on?
ABA, just for parents. Broadly for parents, yes. And so it was just that's the basics. And I went and attended that, and I was just blown away by him and by whatever this thing was, because I didn't know what it was. I was like, I want this. I need to learn this. This is what I think I can. It gets me. I get it. This is what I need to do more of. And so pursued it since then, tried to find as many kind of workshops or trainings or whatever I could. There weren't many, but I did a few. And then I met Smita Avasti over there, and I did she was still studying to do her BCABA, and she had proposed a training for people who are interested. So I did I think it was like a 7-8 week training where every weekend I went to Dubai, and she did some just didactic training. And that was very interesting. That kind of let me dig deeper into behavior analysis, and thought maybe I can do this. So then I looked for a mentor, because there was nobody here who could mentor me, to do my fieldwork supervision and all of that. And Dr. Siri Ming.
How did you get so lucky?
Everyone told me that she was mentoring a few people, I think not in UAE, but in the region, like India and stuff. And everybody who I asked told me, oh no, she'll never take you. And I was like, okay, we'll try. And I wrote to her, and she said, yes, of course. So I think, again, very grateful for having such great mentors. She's still my supervisor, because I'm a BCABA, I still need supervision.
Yeah.
Who better would I get? So that still continues, that relationship. And so I started that. I took the course sequence while I was still I stopped working at the nursery, and then I started doing home-based work with families that needed support here. And those were the days of video recorders and Skype.
Yep.
So I used to have to take a tripod with me and set up a video machine that recorded the entire session, and go home and then look for parts that I can send to Siri so that she would look at, and she would, you know, she would give me supervision tips on that. So it was interesting. I wouldn't want to do it that way again, because it was really, it took loads of time. But the good thing with that was I got to see me again, like, you know, all my, and so I learned so much from just watching what I was not doing right or what I was doing right. It was awful at the beginning, because I was like, what am I doing? What is this? but then it really helped me get better, because, you know, when you're in a region where, or in a place where you don't have any access to other professionals, it's really lonely. It's like once or twice a month I get to see Siri, and that was it, you know, and a few emails. And it was really like it was hard, I must say. That was a hard thing to do. And there was constant questions about, am I doing this right? Am I, you know, really messing this up? Who am I? The whole, you know, this big imposter thing kept showing up all the time. It's like, who am I to tell this parent what to do? Who am I to go into their home and fix these things? Who am I? What am I? Who am I? But I stuck with it. And
I'm so glad you stuck with it and didn't let the who am I get in the way.
Yes, it was. I mean, I can, even when I talk about it now, it's like, ooh, yes, it was hard. But I must say, there was also, it did cause me, so that and some other experiences with the way behavior analysis was being taught and practiced. After my first course at UNT, I had a burnout. I was like, I can't, if this is what behavior analysis is, I can't do this. And I like a simple thing like escape extinction, or, you know, it was something that, as an early years educator for 13 years, I just couldn't understand why one has to go through all of this when you know that this, you know, just the precursor, just when the kid begins to show me someone desirable behavior, he's saying no. So why do I have to, you know, So, but the thing is, I was young and naive, and I did not have the vocabulary for it. I did not have anything for it. Siri was very good in pointing me in all the right directions, and but I guess I didn't spend enough time looking for other ways, and I just burnt out. So we'll go to my burnout later on. But so I took a break. I took a break from coursework and ABA for almost a year, and then went back to the coursework again, and then finished it. You know, then it went smooth in a sequence.
Yeah.
So that's kind of me. By the end of my coursework, I realized that I needed to get out and get more experience, work in ABA settings. And CD encouraged that a lot, because all I knew was me, and that wasn't good enough, right? So I tried to take as many opportunities. When I would travel to India, I would go into settings which just had children there. They didn't have ABA, but they had some children there, and I would try and work in different settings so that I was getting that. And then the last 6 months before my exam, I looked for an internship in the States. And so I wrote to many places, and STARS School, which was owned by Dr. Jim Partington, accepted me to go in there and work as an intern. So I did that, and that was a great experience. Where, you know, they were doing the ABLES R, rewriting the ABLES as ABLES R at that point of time. So I got to see all of that. It was very, very interesting. But I realized when I was there that I am one behavior analyst, assistant behavior analyst in UAE. This program needs like a person and a half per child, and that's not something. So it's a great program.
A person and a half.
And you know, we had no capacity here. So,
Yeah.
and I couldn't go back, come back here, or if I was going to go back to India and have a program that needs that many people on day one. So I had to find something that would help me build capacity and have a sustainable program, which will not need so many behavior analysts, which can take people off the ground and get them ready to make those decisions and implement programs without having to spend that many years and hours and dollars to become behavior analysts. You see what I mean? Like, not very, so, and that's when I spoke to Siri again about like, this internship is going great, but this is what I'm looking for. And she said, I've been telling you, you need to go meet Vicky Tucci in California. She's the author of Competent Learner Model. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, oh, but this sounds so big. Competent Learner Model sounds so huge. And I don't know if I can do that. And she said, just go meet her. So I did. I wrote to Vicky and she said, yeah, come over. I have a cottage outside my house. You can come and stay here. I was like, you know me from nowhere and you're offering me to. And she said, yeah, just come. And so I went and I have not regretted that ever. That's the best decision I made. So yeah, that's me.
Wow. That's
Wow.
that's
story.
so amazing. Like there's so many people in there, like big
Yes.
names, amazing practitioners that you just happen to have interactions with, but you also took that extra step, right? Like these things could have just existed and you could have gone to the training and like never done anything with it, but you constantly battled that, like, who am I, whatever, and you just went for it. And like, as you explain more about what you're up to, people, I hope, are listening and hearing what the difference it can make to just send an email, to just ask the question, right? Even if you're like, why would they want to hear from me? This is why.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really it was like I said earlier, it was hard, but the and Siri always said to me, is like, just write to them. They want, and I come from a culture, I think it was also a cultural bias. I come from a culture where, like university professors are God and you can't ask them for things and they're not going to share stuff with you and they're not going to have you in their homes. That's the kind of place I came from. Maybe it's just me, but that's where I came from. And then Siri's asking me to write to Jim Partington and Pat McGravy. And these are like, and Vicky Tucci, these are gods. It's like, well, why would they even write back to me? And then when they wrote back and, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And they were all so very, I think our field being young at that point of time, people were really open to collaboration, to sharing, to giving, which I think isn't happening as much as it used to. But I'm just truly grateful that I had all those opportunities and all those people were there and I was able to access that.
Yes. That's so amazing. Well, before we go on to the next question, I just want to give a quick update because we are broadcasting this live on Facebook. Feel free, for those of you who are watching, to share this broadcast for other people to join as well. But Maggie says hello and Shelly Lynn says hi as well. Chrissy says Nipa is an inspiration. Vicky's actually watching and says hi. And she said, Vicky said, Nipa has done some incredible work with children, and Monica and Bindu agree. So.
Oh, it's so good. Hi, Chrissy. Hi, everyone. It's so good that you guys are watching. I'm just sharing the same old story.
All right, Joe, do you want to
then,
ask the next question, or did you have?
Yeah, and before we go on, Shelly Lynn also said that I wish that kind of collaboration would happen more. And I agree. I mean, that's amazing that collaboration happened that early in our field. And having that collaboration, what happened? We expanded our field and created a positive impact on more kids in the world. So like for me, that's super important that we need as a field to continue that collaboration. Yeah. Because who are we benefiting? The kids that we come in contact, the families that we come in contact with. So that's amazing. But so what has your journey been with ABA since you completed your coursework?
So I completed my coursework and passed my BCABA in 2008. And at that point of time, I was working part-time in a rehabilitation center here where I was setting up an autism department. And when I came back, and I had already met Vicky, and she very generously provided the competent learner model for us to set it up in the Future Center, where we were setting up the autism unit, like I said. And so I came back and got busy setting that up, and I loved doing that because the Future Center was generous enough to let me try something new. I think there was so many pathways that just opened up on my journey. I don't know why and how, but that's how it happened. And so I got that opportunity to implement the competent learner model entirely in a setup which had which had students and staff and a physical setup. So it was I was very lucky to be able to do that. The competent learner model in itself, for those of you who don't know, is a model that's based on ABA, direct instruction, and precision teaching. Vicky Tucci is the author of that model, and it's not a curriculum only, or it is an implementation model. So it comes with a package which has its tools for the learners. So it has an assessment tool and a curriculum. It has tools for the instructors where you start training them right from day one. So you could have anybody who can read and write English, use a computer, and wants to work with children, come in and begin the training. The training courses are online, and then there are courses to mastery. So they have to be practicing under the supervision of a trained coach and implementing. And they go through that, they take the training, they become certified instructors and then certified coaches. So all of those tools are there for everyone to use. And the third thing that they have is the implementation design, the administrative tools. So they have the tools for practitioners, the tools for the administrators, whether it's in a school or whether it's in a home for parents. So, and it recognizes that it's kind of designed based on the science of implementation. So it recognizes per phase. When you go into a home on day one, you will not have certain results. You will not have certain outcomes because you have to put things in place. You have to put structures in place. And each phase has its own requirements and outcomes designed, which you just have to go in and look at and see what you need to do next. So the entire package really produces consistent results. Everybody speaks the same language, everybody agrees on the same methods, and everybody is using the tools consistently. So you could walk into a CLM classroom or a CLM home in any part of the world and ask which phase are they in and which lesson is the child in, and that will give you a very, very quick idea of the entire structure without having to go into long discussions or reports. So that was really, really something that helped me as a behavior analyst when I came here to set up the team, get them training, get them started, and get them running. So I enjoyed doing that. I did that for 4 years at the Future Center, and again hit burnout. So this is something again we'll talk about later. But and there's like a whole story behind that. But yes, and that's when but by that time we had certified coaches within the competent learner model in Future Center. So I was able to move out of there, and the program and the model still continues over there. And that's when I decided that I needed to do something else to serve more people. By then, UAE was getting, getting on with the game, getting on with the awareness piece for autism, with the acceptance piece. We were working a lot on raising that awareness. And the need, of course, was ever growing, but there was also more places, more behavior analysts coming in. So there was some kind of professional community being formed. My experience as a behavior analyst, initial years, like I said, was very lonely. I had to really go into very, very layman explanations all the time. My language, my professional language had to be very basic because people, jargon would have just made them run. So there was no way I could use any of it. I lost a lot of my professional vocabulary over the years because I didn't have to use it ever. And once it started to grow, it was in silos, kind of, there wasn't, because I think there was no platform, there wasn't collaboration happening. We had, the Future Center had the ABA program, the New England Center had the ABA program. So there was little groups, but I think when Michelle Kelly came to UAE, she set up the Middle East, UAE Middle East, and that brought a lot of professional collaboration. Like people came together, people started to talk to each other, get to know each other. So I'm very grateful for her having come to UAE and setting this up for that platform up for networking. Overall, my experience, I would say, has been good. I want it to be better from the perspective of collaboration, as you said earlier, Joe. There's a huge need. The whole multicultural aspect, because people come from different histories, they react or they behave or they collaborate differently. And there's also a culture of consultative behavior analysis rather than implementation of behavior analysis. So it's more like everybody who becomes a behavior analyst or who is a behavior analyst begins or practices as a consultant. That's the way the design of businesses has been here. One has to remember, I should have mentioned this earlier, but in UAE, all ABA services are private pay. Unless they are in certain organizations here, which are under education and government bears the expense of it only for Emirati, for UAE national children, some very few Emirati children. So because it's private pay, it's designed as a business. And so there's some, how do I want to say this? There's some things that I don't like about it, although my company is also a business. I'm not going to say it's not, it is, but when you have a practitioner own a business versus a business person own a business and a practitioner who's an employee, it changes the value statement, it changes the focus. So that's something that I would like to see as a change in behavior analysis. Behavior analysts are burning out very fast, very quick in this kind of environment because there's one behavior analyst who is doing everything and also has to meet the number of hours and the numbers at the end of the month. And it's hard. It's really causing burnout. People are, I've seen so many behavior analysts come here very excited into UAE and 2 years later leave really jaded. And so I think that's where some work is needed. I think more work is needed in that. Sure.
Yes. Wow, there was so many great pieces of information in there. On Facebook Live, there was a few people commenting how much they love the competent learner model. And I was saying for you or anyone else, if anyone's interested in doing an introduction to CLM for the Do Better Collective, I'm sure everyone would like to learn more about it. My quick spiel that I give on it when I'm trying to explain it to people, because I'm not trained in it myself, but I have seen Vicky present and a few other people, and I've done a few workshops and things. One of my favorite things about competent learner model and I just wish all behavior analysts did this, is the fact that it focuses on the learner and making sure that the learner has the skills in place to learn. So Vicky has done an incredible job. And of course, you know, those who have worked with her over the years in creating these stages of learning and really looking at, you know, the prerequisite skills and systematically, like the scope and sequence is just phenomenal. So that's one of my, I know you said, like, you were talking about how like you could go to any site and talk the same language and people are doing the same things, and that's amazing too. But my favorite part is just that focus on the learner and assessing, you know, what's going on for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as we are talking about the competent learner model, I want to kind of talk about one thing that blew me away when I first saw it, and it still does every day, is as all other curricula have these skill sets that people teach, and you know they name them all different things. Vicky has called them the 7 repertoires, which are, you know, required for any person to be a competent learner. And 6 of them are like what we see everywhere, you know, like, you know, observing and problem solving and reading and writing and listening and talking. So those are, she's written them beautifully. Each level has its own lesson format and all of that. But the 7th repertoire, which she calls the participator, which I have not seen anywhere else. It's like it's a condition, an instructional condition, and across 4 conditions is what we work in, right? It's teacher directed, peer directed, semi-directed, and non-directed. And we, as NCLM, you systematically teach your learners to participate across all these 4 conditions. So it's not about just teaching the skill to talk or read or write or listen, but to teach it across participating across all these 4 conditions. And that produces competent learners. That produces learners who then are able to bring together the skills that they're learning and build on top of on those skills on their own. We don't have to do multiple exemplar teaching all the way in their life for everything new that they come across, because they have generative skills. They're learning skills that are generative enough for them to plug them in together so that they can then perform new behaviors without having to be taught those. And I think that is like the thing that blows away my mind every time, because I know we see parents saying, oh, but now he's doing this and we never taught him this. Yes. And that's the whole goal, that we don't want to be teaching him everything all their lives. We want him to teach skills that he can learn from on his own. So yeah, so that's, you know, the competent learner model, one of the really cool things about that.
We had a couple of more comments come in on Facebook Live. There was, let's see, I'm just trying to get to the right spot. Shelley also agrees profit cannot be the primary focus. There needs to be a balance. It's difficult to find as employee and owner. And Monica said she agrees with you. ABA is hard to practice in the UAE. And I've been connecting with Chrissy as well about potentially trying to set up a competent learner model discussion around the public schools that she's been working on too. So
yes,
we can have multiple CLM presentations.
Chrissy is great, and her experience is really I think that would be very good for people who work in public school settings in the US, because I think she has so much to offer with that. Yeah.
So I always have follow-up questions, so feel free to say pass.
Please do. No,
but I have 2
otherwise
for
I'll
you.
be talking too much. Yeah.
My first follow-up question is just broad, and it's just how, like, because I'll tell you my background on this. So my first encounter with CLM specifically, I promise this isn't just a CLM focused podcast, but I had you know, when I lived in Virginia, there's a CLM site up in Richmond, a few of them. And I had these encounters with people where they were BCBAs, and they they had jobs and then were told like, oh, as part of your job, like we're using the CLM. And they were very rigid. Surprise. And they were not very open to like the language used and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, at that time I was pretty rigid too. So I was like, oh, I don't know. What is this? Like, I'm not sure. This just seems like behavior analysis, but like using different words or whatever. And then I was fortunate, a year later, I was in grad school at Ohio State getting my PhD, and my friend Mary connected with Vicky, and we had like a Skype session at some point, and she was talking to us about stuff. And like I said, I got to go to some presentations and learn more, and I was just blown away. But I think back to that like rigidness of my own reaction, but also the others. And I actually went back to the others and I was like, hey, I've learned more about this and I really like it. And the reason the language is this way is so that it can be more connected, especially in the schools, because not everyone speaks our lingo, like you already said, Nipa. And they were still really rigid about it. And I was just like, come on. So very long question, but my question is, have you experienced anything similar in the work that you're doing in the UAE or anywhere else, like in working to use CLM in different spaces, or just in general, I guess, with like behavior analysis too?
Yeah. So the thing is, like my company is really small, and in the last 2016 is when we established it. But before that, whenever I spoken about CLM to behavior analysts, practicing behavior analysts elsewhere, they were all like, what is it? And then when they look at it, and like what you said, similar reaction is like, oh, but why? Like, why does she call it this? And why do I have to learn new vocabulary? And, oh, but it's too, and I've said to some people, we've also kind of, if somebody's shown a lot of interest, Vicky is happy to let me kind of share a couple of units to just let them see what it's like. And then they'd say, oh, but it's too basic. It's too easy. And like, okay, come and practice it. And so that was the experience generally with behavior analysts. Although there have been some people who have been genuinely very interested and seen it for what it is and taken so much from it, even if they've not, like yourself, who have not really gone ahead and completed the course of study or anything, but they can get the zoomed out lens and look at what all the parts and see how it comes together and why this can make such a big difference. After we started the company, I've interviewed a lot of BCBAs who we would want to hire. And most of the time at the interview level itself, it was easy to tell that this person is not going to be wanting to do this, because the requirement for anyone who works with us at whichever level, whether it's the instructor level or beyond up to a BCBA, BCBAD, they have to take the course of study and they have to do it the way, it's not just like read it through. They have to do the performance checkouts and the verbal checkouts with a certified coach who may not be a BCBA. And that seems to come in the way of a lot of BCBAs because, oh, but she's not even a BCBA and she's going to tell me what to do.
Egos.
Like I'm done with learning. I've already learned everything I need to. So yes, that has happened. But I've been very fortunate. We have hired BCBAs who were young and who were very so thirsty to learn and were very keen on learning, who had not had excellent experiences in their own histories and were looking to learn more. And they've taken the entire course of study, learned from people who are not BCBAs, and are doing such a wonderful job. So I think there's people and there's people.
Yeah. Well, and it's good though that you're able to tell even at the interview level that so you're not wasting time on people. It's unfortunate that happens, but at least you can tell. So
yeah. I mean, it's been hard. I must say that it was initially, I was myself, and I would, in the first year when I would interview a BCBA, I was personally wondering, like, why would they do it? They're not going to do this. They're not going to learn from others. And then Kathy Skada, who is our director of implementations, kind of really said, no, Nipa, you just have to say this. You have to come out and say, this is what is required of them. And if they don't want to do it, there's no point, like you said, there's no point wasting our time.
yeah.
Because whether you're with it or you're not, like you can't be a BCBA for a team who doesn't believe in the tools that we use, right, or who doesn't agree with the methods. So that would not help. So yeah, I'm again fortunate to have good mentors who told me what not to do in good time.
Yeah.
I would almost want to say, like, even being a BCBA in this field, like, if you get in this field thinking that after you complete the coursework, you're good for the rest of your career, you shouldn't be in this field. Like, I just don't see.
Yeah.
I think it's a requirement as a BCBA that you should always be hungry to learn more and be willing to learn more. Yeah, because this is a science, and science change, and we learn more, and new things come up, and like, okay, well, let's adapt and let's learn, and let's do what's best for our kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think what you're saying, Joe, is so true. But what happens is when I mean, I'm just going to say that when a person or a company or a group of people don't have a mentor or whoever is leading, a leader who has a value-based vision, like they're not working towards a specific value-based vision, which they all agree on, right? So you could have a value that is the same for the entire group, and everybody agrees on that. And then you keep coming back. Your leader, whoever your visionary person is, brings the entire team back to, like, whatever decisions we're making, is it congruent to the values that we have? And if we don't, then that's when this happens. And like Shelley was saying earlier, you said on the Facebook chat, and Monica was saying that it's hard to be practicing in this field if you don't have a team that agrees on the values. And that's when, things like maybe the BCBA really wants to do what is right for the learner, but their environment or the team or the business doesn't allow them to. And that just creates this pull. You have to do this, but you can't, and you want to, and that it's not great for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to do that and to continue to come back to it. But even before that, it's just hard to have that clarity, to know why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people have that. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's not like overarching values that they've identified for. That's just, oh, this is, the job that I'm doing.
I do think that should be part of the training, like, like especially in work, the kind of work that we do, especially when you're working with the autism population, or with any kind of marginalized population, you really need to know why you're doing what you're doing, because otherwise it can't just be money. We all need to earn, and we all need to survive, and we all need to save. I am not saying no to that, but I don't see that can be the focus or the reason for us to get up and go to work, to do the work that we do. Because if that's, I could do many easier things and so get that money.
Yeah.
This is a hard one. And why would you choose to do this for money only?
Well, and I'd argue too, it can't just be for the love of our science.
Oh, no,
there's a lot of people that love behavior analysis, and myself included, that go this route just because of that. But that can't be that's not it either, because then you lose touch with the human connection piece, and you get so drawn into the science part that you forget how to be a human.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And all our subjects are human, all our people are human. I mean, we work with humans, and you can't remove the humans and just keep the science there, right?
Yep.
It doesn't work.
Right. We have a couple comments from Facebook. Shelly, we really appreciate your active engagement with us here. I feel like you're a second guest for us. Shelly agreed we need to be continual learners, and values-based vision is essential. I really like this comment. She said, lack of vision equals burnout.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right. My other question for you, my follow-up. So you and I have talked a little bit, checking in over, COVID and everything. And I'm just kind of curious if you want to share, because we did not talking about this, but what impacts happened in the UAE with the work you were doing for the past year from COVID?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about that, but I would just want to go back a little bit before we get into this. I wanted to talk about my team, because that's important to what happened in COVID.
Yeah.
So I think, my story it's never finished. So when I stopped working at the Future Center, then I really wanted to do something that would be sustainable and useful for parents. So I started something called the Autism Support Network. It was just a platform to connect people who were touched by autism, whether there's parents or professionals, so that they could make their own little groups and then do their stuff with each other. Having these multiple cultures and families here, it was kind of a barrier also, because people didn't speak the same language, their home cultures were different. It was hard for people to connect with other people from different cultures when they already had a child with autism. So this group was formed, and that has mushroomed into many other different bigger groups doing their own stuff now. So that was great at that time. It took a while, but it took off. From that, I met the amazing ladies, and they were in Dubai, and they heard about the CLM, and they wanted to learn more, and they connected with me, and I started training them on CLM, and they started working in homes, and that was my team, and that became my team, and we started doing some home programs together, and then that kind of mushroomed into working in a nursery together and training more people. And today, before COVID, we were 40 people in the team, 40 ladies, all women in the team.
Wow.
And but then COVID happened. So at that time, we were working in nurseries in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We would set up a classroom within a nursery, and so that we could have on-site inclusion opportunities. Children were going to their regular settings rather than going into clinics. That was an ongoing intervention and training ground for us. We were doing the same in homes and in nurseries. And then COVID happened, so we had to shut down the nurseries. We were not allowed inside nurseries anymore.
Yeah.
Nurseries closed, and they've opened now, but we are still not allowed in because we are external providers. So very quickly, we had to look at what else we could do, and it took us about 2 months to figure out that we could do home programs once they gave us permission. And it took about 4 months. We closed in March, and in July, we were given permission to go into homes. So then we started doing home-based work. We continued our training programs online, and that's kind of my team came through with all the changes, with all these challenges. We lost a few people because they had to leave the country, they had to go back home. We survived this. We are now looking at how we're going to use everything that we learned in this year. We became a lot closer as a team. I'm thankful in that way for COVID, for giving us that opportunity to connect better, to stand by each other, to learn from each other. And we also got more flexibility with time and things because of the whole online thing. So we were kind of working at night, working in the morning, working whenever, everybody was at home. So lots of work on ourselves and on our teams with each other happened during this time. So that was kind of the great thing that happened in COVID. We lost a few of our staff members. Bindu, who is watching, is one of them who went back to India. So we miss her loads.
Oh.
But I'm hoping, I have like, I believe that once things are better, we will be back and growing further for sure. Families really struggled without services. Parents were working from home. They didn't have services. They were worried. You know, we're early intervention. So if we're a year into a program and then suddenly there's nothing, child was losing skills, parents were losing, you know, faith. They didn't know what to do. So that was really hard for the families. For our team, we hadn't gone into a lot of homes by the time COVID started. It was just a few members of the team had done home programming earlier. So it was a whole new learning curve going into homes and, you know, figuring out how the material is going to work and how are we going to do this and how are the coaches going to supervise on Zoom while these girls are working, running around inside the home. So those were our challenges. Also kind of, you know, staff behavior with families, how different cultures, different languages, everything was so new to them. So we had to put aside a lot of time for our frontline staff members to come back and download, like, you know, because they were scared, they were worried traveling, you know, public transport or going into homes, being exposed to more people and their experiences that they needed to talk to us about. So we set up a lot of time for people to come back and talk, share. I use, as you know, I'm a big fan of ACT. So we use a lot of ACT for parents and for team members during COVID, a lot of it.
Yeah. Wow. You know, Nipa, I completely forgot about, you had told me when I was in, I think the first time I met you, and maybe it might have even been Michelle that told me about that whole thing that you started with the parents. I like completely, like, just yet another thing that Nipa's done. I totally forgot about. But that's incredible how like that transpired over time, you know, to not just a group that was formed, but that it's been so integral in like everything that's happened.
Yeah, it's been amazing with that, you know. I just think that a lot of other small things grew out of it, and it, you know, yeah, it was like, I can't even, sometimes I'm just kind of get so overwhelmed by the fact that all of this happened and that I was part of it. I was just kind of right place, right time, maybe.
Well, I think you need to give yourself a bit more credit than that, but
no, but I do think it's easy. It's harder in certain ways, but also easier in certain ways when you're at the start of something, because there's like so many things, so many possibilities.
Yeah, that's true. Well, is there anything else about the UAE that you want to share before we go on to the next question?
Yeah, always.
We had prepared.
So I was saying, like, you know, when Michelle Kelly came here, she started the UAE Middle East Facebook page, and kind of that was a platform for behavior analysis to come together and talk the language. And then we started, Sharifa Yatim was our first Emirati BCBA from UAE, and now we have 4 Emirati BCBAs. So that's another like a 400% growth, which is huge. And so Sharifa, Michelle, myself, and a few other people from New England Center, we got together and we kind of a few years ago started the UAE ABA chapter, but it got formalized this about a year ago now, and we have a national UAE ABA chapter. So that's, I think, a huge kind of, you know, step forward. And we're also working towards national licensing. It's all a work in progress, but the UAE as a country will have its own national licensing process for ABA professionals. And so that's a kind of a big shout out to everybody who has worked so hard here. And especially I'd say Michelle Kelly deserves a lot of praise for that, because she's just, she doesn't tire out. She just keeps at it.
Right.
Yes. So yeah, she's great. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say about kind of the UAE ABA, starting from one person to now having a chapter and having 489 active professionals. It's huge and growing, and people are now really looking forward to big steps.
Right. That made me think about collaboration. I know, like we talked earlier about how, it can be better in a lot of places and whatnot. But wow, that's amazing. That like shows what can be accomplished when professionals are working together. There's states here in the US that have been, I think we're only at like 20 years, like close to 30 states that have licensure, right? Yeah. And even here in Florida, there are behavior analysts who've worked together to try to get it. So I don't want it to be like rainbows and sunshine, like just because you're working together doesn't mean you're going to get it. But
yes, absolutely. It's a long road, but I think it's just great that it's already on its way. Right? So I think that's the intent is there, and we've already started the work on it. So
yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's so exciting. And and I know Michelle also does a lot of really neat stuff. Are you involved at all with the different like lecture series and things that she does?
So she does it through the university where she works, to the college that she works, but I have presented for a couple of them. And then every year in April, we do the Autism Month. And so the Autism Support Network that I founded kind of collaborates with her university, with NYU. And we do, if it was in physical presence, we would do a conference at NYU and a whole Autism Day at Emirates College for Advanced Education. This year we did mostly online stuff. But the cool thing with that, I must say, is when we first started doing talks and conferences in Abu Dhabi or in UAE, they were mainly about red flags and awareness, and it's kind of when you just start off. And this year Michelle Kelly did one where it was parents telling professionals what they think we should know. So we've evolved to a point where parents are telling us now what we should know, and we're not telling them what they should know.
Right.
So that was one. Another one was where we had 3 parents and 1 person on the spectrum telling us how the landscape has shifted. What are the shifts in perspective from what in their journey? And I thought that was such a way forward for us to go from red flags to having a person on the spectrum talking about what their journey has been like.
Yes.
So that has been really interesting for us.
And I love that you all are making those steps forward, because it can be easy to get stuck in a cycle of just, well, this is how we've always done it, and these are the things we tell people, and blah, blah, blah. But like we were talking about earlier, we need to be, continuing to grow and do better as we learn more. So that's awesome to hear. Such a great model for people to follow. And that's one of the things too that I've talked to Michelle about. We did an ABAI presentation last year, and I told her to maybe consider writing like a white paper or something on what's happening in the UAE and what you all have done there, because it's a wonderful model of what can be accomplished in other places.
Absolutely. I think so. Yeah. I mean, if we were to document the entire journey of ABA here, it would be a good replication model, like something that can be replicated. And I hope that happens.
Do it. Follow up with her after.
I have to say, so of all the good things that I've done, one of the things I'm not so good at is writing, academic writing, writing all of, I can say it, but it's just hard for me to do that. And Michelle Kelly is really the person for that. I think she would do such a wonderful job.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, you just, Michelle can take the lead on it, and you can just help support her in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Yeah. We have so many such projects going where Michelle has the lead and I'm just kind of, following around and saying, okay, yes, whatever you say, whatever you need, I will give you the information, Michelle.
All right, well, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Obviously, we talked about when we first got on that you're originally from India and still have family there. So I'm imagining you have some insight regarding behavior analysis in India. I've not had the pleasure of visiting India yet. And I'm curious what the presence of behavior analysis is like in such a large and highly populated country.
Sure. So as I was looking at numbers this morning, I also pulled out India's numbers and
bring in the data.
India has total of 90 active people. 90, yes.
And what's the population differential there?
Oh, don't even go there. And out of which 42 RBTs, 16 BCABAs, 30 BCBAs, and 2
it's
BCBAs.
90 total.
Total.
Oh, yes. Yes. I thought it was 90 BCBAs.
No, there's 30 BCBAs, 16 BCABAs. Yeah. So that is kind of, representational of where ABA is. And I don't think I think it's a function of many things. One of them being the prohibitive cost of ABA training. In terms of Indian rupees, the amount that you would pay would be, somebody's salary for 5 years, I'd say. It's a lot of money. So that's one of the things that has been the barrier there. Secondly, of course, the access to training. There isn't much. It's all people just have to do it online. There's only one BCS in India, so that's been another difficult thing with such a large country if there isn't enough access. And in the last couple of years, I would say that online education has picked up, but before that, the access to physical universities and colleges and education is quite a lot in India. So people would not automatically turn to online education and pay 50 times more for it.
Yeah,
that just doesn't go well in people's minds, right? So that has been, I think, one of the things. Secondly, I think behavior analysis, it's not did not get the recognition that it should have for autism treatment. India is known for a lot of eclectic treatments, which every home kind of comes up with their own. And so it's hard to get a scientific treatment, evidence-based treatment being accepted, because this takes so much time. There's like a lot of barriers, cultural barriers, financial barriers, economic barriers, time barriers. There's so many barriers to it that it has taken a while to even get acceptance. And then I think, this is completely my own opinion, no data on this, but I just think that by the time people started to kind of hear of it and take to it, ABA as a field is getting so much flack for so many other reasons, that people who were just beginning to like it are now reading so much anti-ABA stuff that they're kind of falling off. They don't want to do it. So it's not great timing for India, I think, that this happened. Professional collaboration in India is a big question mark. Because ABA is not in universities. Anybody who's practicing ABA is a private practitioner who is doing their own thing, and so there isn't anybody who's getting paid to grow this field. When you have somebody who is a university employee, they're getting paid to do a little more than for the community, because that's part of their, the research or whatever time that they're given extra, they can do that. When a person is, so they don't choose to, they can choose to, but they don't choose to. And so that's another thing that I see is like, there's nobody who really is doing this to grow the field. There is the ABA chapter, but I think it needs to open up to more views and people with different views to the field. As a, like, I think what has happened in the rest of the world with ABA has already happened in India, like, closing the field. Like only, there's only these views that can be ABA and nothing else can be ABA. Your practice is very narrow. So that whole psychological flexibility of acceptance and growth is missing.
Yeah. It just fascinates me. Like, we are supposed to teach people how to be flexible, and so many people in our field love ACT, and then here we are.
It's like, the ACT work that we do. Like every other country where I look at people who are practicing ACT, there's so many behavior analysts on it, right? But in India just have launched their ACBS chapter, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I was part of the conference, like I attended the conference, and I was looking at the people in it, and I'm part of their WhatsApp group, and there's like 2 other behavior analysts on it other than me, out of the 46 BCAs and BCAs. And I was like, why are there not more behavior analysts on this? There should be, because that will teach us flexibility, and that's where we learned all of this, and we can go back to it. But I think it's at that stage where it's in a silo of its own, and like the psychologists can be with us, and ACT practitioners can be with us, and we are good by ourselves. That's the space that they're in. So I think evolutionary, it will come. It will take time.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed, and I talked with you about with this, is it makes, I guess, maybe a little bit more sense knowing that there are only, would you say 30 BCBAs?
30 BCBAs.
But I feel like when I see things happening in India, like posts about stuff that's happening, I only see like the same 2 or 3 people. Yeah. Whether it's conferences here where people are presenting and there's the affiliation, or like, it's clear that they're from India, or if it's something being posted, from a company in India or something like that. It's always the same. And that's wonderful. Like, I feel like I can get to know these people and whatnot, but I'm like, surely there have to be more than these 2 or 3 people that could talk be talking about things.
I would say again, one of the things over there would be financial resources. Yeah. Right? If I have to travel to an ABAI conference, I have to pay for tickets and a week's stay there, and it's almost prohibitive, that kind of expense. And I don't know if ABAI provides scholarships, or I'm sure that they do something, but maybe some more needs to be done for countries which have such low income, because you can't charge in dollars for people who are earning in rupees, right? You can't. So your clients are not going to be able to pay that kind of money, and you are not going to be able to spend that kind of money to go visit conferences and all. I consider myself grateful for living in UAE, where the price index is much better, and so I can afford to do this. I would not be able to do everything that I did, like doing an internship in the US at my own expense. I would not have been able to do that if I were living in India.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, again, the field is so focused on the Western world, and if we want to grow it to people, to the larger side of the world where more people live, we're going to have to do something about making it more accessible, making it the services cheaper.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That reminds me a lot of what I've heard Adrian Bradley talk about with accessibility. And I've seen, I think, a few different people comment on this on like different Facebook things, but Adrian and I have had specific discussions about, for here in the work she's been trying to do to get more access to the field for Black behavior analysts, and just like the limits on the, like, they can't even get in the door because it's so cost prohibitive, whether it's the conferences or the graduate training or, you know, the this or the that. There's so many costs associated with it. Two things came up for me about what you were saying. One, with the just one thing that I want to encourage, if anyone's listening to this podcast that organizes conferences or is responsible for putting things together, try to make sure that you're researching various people, because this is a problem in our field in general. And we've all seen it where it's like every conference season, it's the same people presenting, whether it's here in the States or anywhere else. It's like the same 10 people. It's like somebody saw these people were presenting at this one conference and then they just get contacted to present at all the other conferences.
Yeah,
and
true.
that's, you know, great for those people or whatever, but there's quite a few people in our field who know things. So I'm not trying to say, you know, like take away from the work anyone's done or anything, but there are like, I know at least like you, and then I know like at least 3 or 4 other people that I've met, thankfully, from my travels. Like when I went to the Pan-African Autism Congress, when I or just different projects I've worked on, I have met virtually and in person different people from India that are working in the field, but I've never seen them presenting, you know what I mean? Yeah. So point being, if you're organizing conferences, whether you're trying to have people representing like different areas of the world or different topics or whatever, try to not always ask the same people you see presenting all the time, because there's different perspectives that could be included.
I think another shout out also would be to, I mean, I'm just jumping in, is like, I don't know if this is like a far, I'm pushing this further. Like if those people who are getting contacted continuously get contacted, maybe they can then say, oh, I've already spoken 3 times. Why don't you ask so-and-so?
Yep. And I do that too. I mean, eventually people's schedules get full anyway, but I do that, you know, if people contact me and I'm already too full, or it's a topic that like, I don't even know that much about and somebody else would be better. Or just in general, like I'm already doing like certain presentations, like I'll say, you know, but so-and-so knows this, like, let me hook you up with them instead, you know, thank you for pointing that out. The other thing that came up for me around like the costs, and we haven't talked about this in a ton of detail, so if you don't have an answer, that's fine. But I'm wondering for the IBAO and like the stuff that they're setting up, the certification, does that seem like that or something similar could be a potential way to address that barrier?
I mean, I looked at the IBAO stuff, and it's a good direction, but I worry about then, I know, and I'm now speaking on the other side, and I'm worried about the standards then, you know, and like who is going to, you know, because, you know, we're talking about large countries. I mean, you know, large populations, and how are we going to hold people responsible ethically for what they do or don't do? And, you know, I know that there's no real answer to this. It is circular, and we're going to either do this or that. But I think more people need to sit down and talk about this and look into what are the possible options. Maybe they may not be linear. They might not be just the same option for all, but there might be some ways of looking at setting up standards and ethics and good training that need not be so prohibitively expensive, but gives people tools to practice. The competent learner model, it has everything.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, like, is certification. So,
cheap.
I mean, I know like CLM has a certification process, right?
It does, yes.
So, and I'm not trying to take away from like some of, you know, the things that already exist in our field, but like, does it make more sense to, especially with such a large population, start first with certifications in certain models like CLM or
private models, you know, and so that private models who themselves are overseeing their implementations and have their own standards to live by, and, you know, have some kind of accreditation where there is, and then that would make sense.
And it's not like you get the knowledge to practice at, like, you to be a practitioner. Again, our science is amazing and whatnot, but there is a difference between a graduate level understanding of a science and practicing, like being a really amazing practitioner. I have met phenomenal practitioners who've never taken an ABA course, but they could clean the floor with some of the doctoral level BCBAs I know from a practitioner standpoint. They might not be able to have a conversation with them about research in our field, but you get them on the floor with a kid, they're going to knock it out of the water, right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. I completely agree. And I see that all the time, you know, and we need both. We need both for sure.
Yep.
But we need more of the floor level people who need to be up and running quickly, and they all don't need to be board certified.
Right.
Because I mean, that's what I've always said, like, not everybody needs to be a BCBA to make a difference. We need, you know, we need people who can actually work with the kids, and then, you know, have supervisors who will show them the way.
Yes. I love that. We need more floor level people. And that made me think of one more thing about competent learner model. That's my favorite. And I presented last year on this at ABAI, the responsiveness to the learner, the training that's done with competent learner model. It's all focused on observing the learner and like the decisions you're making about what to do next for your intervention in that moment are based on what you're seeing from the learner. Again, I think a lot of the times in our field, there's such a focus on, now I'm not saying there aren't steps to follow and things like that, but there's like an over focus on, you know, black and white, follow these procedures, and like not enough focus on like connect with and learn who your learner is. Yeah. And the context and
context,
respond based off of that.
We have so many of these formulas, A, B, and C, do this and this and this, but what about the context, right? You know, because it's going to be different in different contexts, and we don't always know what the context will be, so you can't predict that. So teaching our practitioners to identify the context and then take action, I think is what CLM does really well. And what we were saying earlier is like what one of our standards is to provide multiple opportunities for the students to be successful every day. So what practitioners need to continuously look for is like, what opportunity can I provide so that the learner will be successful? Like, it's not about how do I extinguish this behavior. That's never part of the plan. You know, the part of the plan is always like, how do I provide an opportunity for him to be successful? And if there's more success, then we won't have to extinguish anything.
Yep. Yeah.
So yes, and while we're on the competent learner model, I must remember to say, if anybody's looking for information, CLM Center of Excellence, and I think Megan's going to put the link up there. They have certificate programs in CLM that anyone can take. They're run through the University of West Virginia and Clarion University. They have the BCBA and the BCABA course sequence, BCS, where you take the CLM course of study units and qualify to sit, and those are built to qualify for to meet the requirements for your board certification. And there's also CEUs, so you can do just take some online workshops to get CEUs, and there's much more. So just it's a fascinating learning resource management system. It is amazing. So yeah, just go for it.
Check it out. Yeah, I posted the links in the Facebook Live, and Vicky's been sharing a few links as well, and I'll post them in the show notes too for those that are listening to the podcast. Vicky also was mentioning there's a library of videos, and she was suggesting a certain one to watch, so I'll put that in the show notes too. So you've gotten lots of love on Facebook, Nipa. Everyone is really enjoying what you're saying. It's almost too many comments to share at the moment. I want to make sure we get through all of our questions. So was there anything else about India we should discuss before we move to the next thing?
I would love for to be able to take CLM to India. That's always been my dream. So if there's anyone out there listening and wants to bring it to India, call me. And and the second thing, I think the more important thing is I would be very happy to collaborate with other behavior analysts and kind of start a dialogue on what next, like where are we going, what should we do. And I know that there's a chapter out there. I'm not taking it away from them or anything, but I'd be happy to have kind of more conversations, more to see where this can go. And because I think the chapter is working at some kind of national level, recognition for ABA professionals, and that is great. And I'm kind of happy to help do more. So that's the two things I wanted to say.
Wonderful. And for anyone who's listening, Nipa, are you okay with me putting your email in the show notes? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So touch base with Nipa, send that email. But also I just want to point this out in case somehow people miss this. When you're involved in something, it happens. Like you make things happen. So, even though you don't currently live in India, if there are folks there who are like have projects or things that they want, if they're connecting with what you're saying about like the barriers being faced and even want to learn more about CLM, like you're the one who is like, they need to connect with you because you're a change maker. So
all I would want to say is that having been in the field and being in UAE, I think UAE is like even geographically positioned such that it has access to more. And so I have access and I'm happy to share that access for the betterment of the field in India. So just use me.
Love it. Bindu said, "You are welcome to India. She's eagerly waiting. Let's bring a change."
Yes, Bindu, you know that.
All right, Joe, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes. So
which we kind of already, sorry, real quick. You've touched on this a little bit, so it might just be, is there anything else you want to share for this one?
Yeah, I heard a few, but what are some of the biggest barriers you have experienced or observed as a professional or for families in the UAE?
Okay, so as a professional, I think when I first started out, the barrier was just lack of awareness, like, not of the field, of the science. So that was kind of like a continuous job of talking about ABA before even you can practice it. So that was one of the things that was hard. Not having other professionals around and being lonely, I talked about that. That was hard. Collaboration, I must say, in UAE is pretty good. Like, you've seen, like, we do a lot of work together, we collaborate. I would always be happy for more, but I'm just being greedy. But that has been great. The other thing that we found hard is, and I think that's been kind of the journey of behavior analysis in most countries, is that the need precedes the availability. So you're constantly kind of, finding that gap and trying to fill that gap. Sometimes standards get polluted, is what I want to say, when that gap exists, because if the demand is higher than the supply, there is going to be some pollution of the standards. So that's been a worry always as a professional. Is like, I hope people are getting the services that they deserve, that they need. And, that's one of the challenges that I have faced. I can't say I've faced, but I've worried about. The lack of kind of legislation and policies around autism, around ABA. We have to see that UAE is a new country, and they have policies for disabilities, and they've moved pretty fast. For a 40-some-year-old country now, there is policies from this year. We got a national policy on autism just a month ago. So that is great. I think a great advancement, but for my career to have gone through these last few years without any kind of policy and legislation has been a challenge. The government is actively looking at making that better, and I am grateful for that. And I'm hoping for better days with having ABA being recognized as a profession, and then having the licensure and all of that happening here. So that's great. For families, the biggest challenge has been paying out of pocket.
Yeah.
There's no mincing words to that, because it's not like going to a doctor once or having one surgery and getting a loan and being done with it. With autism, it's kind of ongoing for many years, for many hours. So that's the biggest challenge for families. Secondly, culturally, kind of just I think just getting your head around autism for anyone, for me, even today, is a challenge. It's like, okay, somebody asks me what, like a family member who just comes, my family member says, oh, can you quickly tell me what is autism? Well, I can't. It's just, there's so many things to it. So for a family or for a parent to just bring themselves around that, and then all the trauma and the burnout and the financial burden and the cultural burden and the culture being pretty closed here, the acceptance piece, the male child piece, the work, the blame, the guilt. I think those are universal challenges. I don't see them any different for a person who is from any other part of the world. What adds over here is that 80% of our population here is expatriate. So they are families who have left their own countries and live here. And so not having that extended social network of your family members to support you, that is an added challenge for families who live here. Because literally you find out your child has autism and your friends are gone, right? They don't want to see you anymore. They want. So I've known families who are stuck into their apartment and have not had any social contacts, like, at the weekend or going out with friends for years together. They're just themselves and their children, and they don't do anything else with anybody else because they have a child with autism. So I think that is a very isolating, very difficult situation for parents. Another difficulty is the language barrier, and that again is kind of all over the world, but most services are in English, and not all parents speak English, not all, it's not their mother tongue, but then therapies are in English because that's the universal language here. So we find that pretty challenging as providers and for families themselves. And we've been trying to learn how to be more flexible with it, and all our staff, like I might have a staff member who goes to 6 homes and they have 4 different languages and 3 different religions. And so if I'm trying to tell this person to, like, okay, use the words they use at home, but then, milk has 4 different words, and she's going to just get, the therapist then get confused with which word are we using today in which house. So that's challenging, I'd say. It's not easy, but flexibility is what we keep in front all the time and try and see how we can do that. The way we're trying to get around it, especially this year with COVID, we saw so much more stress with parents, and we were able to bring them in and talk to them more because of this online. We were saving so much time on travel. So we've been able to talk more, work with them more, using the virtual sessions. And that has helped us understand them more and them understand us more.
Yeah. That's a lot. I can't imagine how many, like, that's even more barriers than we have in the States.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah.
They're similar. I mean, I see the same barriers pretty much everywhere I go, but it's like the level of magnitude a lot of the times. I mean, obviously in the States, like a lot of people have access through insurance now, but not everyone. So the funding isn't as much of an issue, but yeah. One of the
I mean,
things
people have sold their homes or sold jewelry just to get like, you know, a year's worth of therapy. So
yeah. One of the things that was very interesting to me when I happened to be in Dubai in April 2000, I guess it was 2017. Gosh, how was that, 4 years ago already? But and it was like an world autism awareness, like they were having like a festival, and you know, in Dubai everything's bigger, right? Like everything's bigger there. So we went to it, and I could not believe the number of booths for service providers. It was wild how many places there were, and like they were offering all sorts of different therapies and services and whatnot. And so from like the quality control angle, that's been one of my biggest concerns there since I had the pleasure of having a client there, is like the number of opportunities for parents to just get taken. It's that's the worst I've seen it out of anywhere I've been.
Yeah, and that's a function of kind of, you know, availability of resources. Like people, most adults who live here have a job, like they're here because they have a job, and so they have they have money, but not enough to, of course, pay any of this. But that's why all the people who are selling all kinds of things, because overall, if you look at UAE, there's always availability of more consumer goods, like more stuff you can spend money on. And that's because of the way the economy is, right? So, and the same with services for autism or for everything else. And I agree with you. That's another challenge, is how do we convince people, or evidence-based strategies, evidence-based treatment versus others, because, you know, there isn't any framework to do that. Once we have the national licensing, at least that will come into place. And if there's insurance attached to it, I'm hoping, then that will be amazing. Then people won't go for anything else, which they have to pay for.
Yeah.
One follow-up question I have is, I'm just curious about insurance in UAE. Do you get insurance through the country? Is or is it through like private companies?
Through companies. So your employer is supposed to give you insurance, but then insurance does not cover ABA, because ABA is not a recognized treatment or procedure yet, so as a profession yet. So it only covers, and then there's levels of insurance. So depending on what level of employment you're at, you get different levels of insurance. And so certain insurances may just cover your very basic medical treatments, and autism does not fall under a medical treatment requirement. I don't even know what the words are for it, but so it's like, you know, even a diagnostic assessment would not be covered.
Wow.
And then for some people that is covered, and maybe occupational and speech therapy will be covered because that go under the medical model, whereas ABA is still not under the medical model. So it's different, but I would say like a very high percentage of population gets nothing. They pay everything out of pocket. So we have lots of families who are like, you know, who are very kind of low middle income group families. Once they get a diagnosis, they will just send the wife and child home so that they can get some treatment at home, and the father will continue to work here, or the entire family will just leave and go back to their home country because they can't afford anything here.
Wow.
I think the government is really looking into that, and I'm hoping that things will change soon. And there seems to be a move towards making it more equitable for all families. So hoping for that.
I'm hoping for that too,
Yeah.
because the treatment is definitely necessary.
Yes. Absolutely. And so that brings us kind of into kind of capacity building, right? Building parent capacity. How do we continuously make sure we don't have to do 40-hour, 20-hour programs? This is like, I'm sure the ABA community is going to like throw me out into the sea now. But I do think that in countries where it's not paid by federal or insurance or whatever, it's just prohibitive. How are you going to do 20 hours and 40 hours? So why not do 5 or 10 hours and use those to teach parents so that they can continue to do the rest of the hours?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's research on that. I don't think you should be ostracized for that. If you are, well, that's just more reflective of some issues in our field. But there is research to show the value of coaching parents, especially. Amy Weatherby is one of the people I don't really get to work with her, but the research I do at Florida State is led by her. And that's the one big area that they are focused on with the Early Social Interaction Project, Early Start Denver model. And then there's other things. Someone asked about parent-child interaction therapy in the Facebook chat. I haven't done anything with it. I've read some about it, and I know some families who have learned about it, and it does have research, but I just not that as familiar with it. And then it also, like in social work here and other fields, the focus, whether it's autism or something else, ADHD, is on, if you can get the parents trained, then you don't really need to, and not even that they have to like sit and do trials, but just having, like with Amy Weatherby's work in the Autism Navigator, they focus on teaching these like broader repertoires where it's like understanding active engagement and how to structure your routine and like make the best out of your moments and like really support
participation.
All of those things. And like basically, like you were saying too, like the competent learner model, like if you taught people about these, the ways that learning happens in a way that's easy to understand, and then they can just promote and support these opportunities. You don't have to sit there with a list of like things from the VB map or the ABLES or whatever and try to check each box off if you know how to promote active engagement and learning.
That's it. Yes. That's what most of our coaching for parents is that we don't do skill, like teaching them how to teach skills, but just active engagement. How are you going to spend your day? If you're at home today, how does your life become better and your child ends up learning something at the end of the day?
Yeah. And this is a new thing for me and probably a whole separate podcast episode, but we did an episode with Hillary and Michael on RIE parenting. And the focus is on like helping teaching parents to observe their child as like their own unique entity. It's not an extension of you that you were supposed to like make you. They're their own being and they have agency, and you should observe them and support learning in that way. So I really love that. But the other thing that I think comes up a lot, and I just, I have one child, and there's so many things, as well, Nipa, and Joe, you're going to know soon, that come up with being a parent. That's like your own struggles you have to deal with. And if we can help parents like navigate that, and that's where like the ACT stuff really comes in that you were interested in. But a lot of things that like don't go well for families, it really does, like, I'm not trying to blame the parents, but it really does like come down to, if you don't have your own stuff together, it's going to be hard to help anyone else. Right. So, if the focus is only on the child and not like supporting the parents and helping them like navigate the stress of their own life and like have their own way of dealing with things, then you're really like kind of running on a hamster wheel, like you're not going to get as far.
We've learned that so much this year, Megan, because earlier we were in the nursery and the child would get dropped off and picked up, and then you meet the parents when it's time to meet them, like once every 4 weeks, and you don't really see, they come for the meeting and you're only seeing that, right? You don't really see what's going on in their homes and behind those masks. Now that we're going into homes, we were seeing patterns of like when that breakdown is going to occur. Right, we would see the pattern, like, and we coached our instructors into reporting back to us what was going, like, little nuances of, like, mom really is tired. Mom was not present today with us, like she was not present, mentally present. And if we know that, we were able to proactively reach out and say, hey, like, can we help? Is there anything going on? Is there anything you need? And that has really helped build our relationship with the parents. And also, we're seeing lesser breakdowns. They're reaching out now when they feel that need, which was not happening before, because we were not able to see those precursors, and now we're able to. So that's been a very interesting learning for us this year.
Yep. Well, we have 10 minutes left. Remember how, Nipa, you were like, are we really going to talk for 2 hours? Yep. I could keep you here all day long.
Who's going to listen?
Everyone will. We have some people who've been on Facebook Live this whole time. And we appreciate that.
I love you guys. Thank you.
Okay. So the last question that we had for you, and you've talked quite a bit about competent learner model. So the last question was just like to let us know how competent learner model and ACT have influenced your work. So I don't know if you want to just focus more on the ACT side. You kind of have touched on both, but any closing points you want to make about those two things?
Sure. So I know that I talked a couple of times about burnout. So when both the times when I had that burnout, what really helped me, the first time I didn't know what ACT was, and I just had to figure things out for myself. But the second time when I had my burnout and I reached out to Siri and spoke to her, she led me to ACT. She said I should look at it, and I practiced it for myself. For a year, I took ACT sessions with Aisling Curtin from Ireland, and I actually read more, talked more, and it made sense to me as a behavior analyst. I needed something that had structure and evidence behind it, and it was still human, like it was still human. It wasn't just data, and it was something that I connected with. So that's where it stayed with me, because I saw it works for me. And my whole journey, like I said earlier, also was like, I love behavior analysis for what it is, but I hated it for some of the things that I saw in it. And I didn't have the words then, and I don't know if I still say this right, is like, I felt that the humanness in it was not there. Like we were not looking at people as humans. We were looking at them so much as subjects. And, there's so much else. It is not just your antecedent behavior and consequence. The antecedent is your whole life previous to this moment is the antecedent. It's not just what happened in the environment right now, because you're carrying everything. And I felt like we were missing that. And I didn't understand that. I was not able to put it out there like this. But ACT helped me understand that, brought me to the point where now I think that compassionate practice is so important, and sometimes if it's not going to work in the moment, I'm okay to let it go. Because for me, the human connection is more important than just being right or doing it the way it's written in the book. I mean, I will go back and do it tomorrow when it's a better time, when I can set the context for it, or when we can, engineer the learning environment for it. But it's not, I think the flexibility is so very important, and keeping in mind where each learner, their histories, their parents, their comes from, and the same for my team, where each of my staff member or teammate is coming from today, and what has been their history and what has been their learning experiences and what they bring to the table, and how we can change those contexts to make things better. So I think ACT has really helped me be a better practitioner, a better human, a better parent, and a better spouse, I think. Or at least I can say that I'm more at peace with myself.
Yeah. I love it. I'm checking. There was a couple comments that came through on Facebook Live. Just seeing if any, okay, not related. Someone was talking about just asking if AIM is related to ACT, and I said yes. And then they shared the social validity, the
Yes,
Keystone
absolutely.
article. One of my favorite articles, Nipa, that you were talking about, losing the humanness, which is funny because as soon as we finish this, I'm going to be recording a Facebook Live to go out that's going to talk about that. So it's funny you brought it up. But one of my favorite articles that I guess it's not even really an article. It was a speech maybe that Steve Hayes did, but it's called Third Wave of Behaviorism from 2004. Holy moly, man. That one. Wow. And it just really gets at what you were talking about. And it floors me that it's from 2004 and we're still experiencing, like he said, we're in the wave, and like some people are still in the first and the second wave.
Exactly. It's like some of the things that, I have said to Vicky is like, Vicky, you didn't publish this, but we've been doing this forever. Like, since that's how it's written. I mean, I don't even know if Vicky was thinking about ACT, but everything that is there is about keeping the context in mind, keeping the people. And it's not only about the learner, it's about all the entire team. Yeah. Like the way the coaching is done, the way we build teams, the way we talk to people, the way we value every person's opinion is so very ACT-based, and that is why, I guess, going back, I can think about it, that is why it was congruent to what I believed in, and that's why it stuck with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am so grateful for that.
Yes, I'm so grateful that you had the opportunity to learn from all of these amazing people. And of course, Siri, it sounds like, I mean, I already knew she was an incredible mentor and supervisor, amazing, but it sounds like she really takes a vested interest and makes the recommendations of like how you can do the things that need to be done.
So if anyone's interested in, like, she's running right now a 4-week community of practice is what it is. They've set up a community of practice and you can join it for they do a class once a week. And then there's lots and lots of resources for self-care and self-compassion. And so if anybody is interested, please email me and I'll send it out, or look up Constellations is what it's called. But I've seen that. Yeah, that's the new. It's amazing. I'm doing it now, and it's great because you get to connect with like-minded people and build your little community of practice.
I love it. I'll post the link to that in the show notes as well. That's another, there's so many, that's one other benefit of COVID. There's so many of these like online communities that have started from it. So that one is Siri, Evelyn,
Rebecca and Julia.
Julia. Awesome. Cool. So, all right. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Are there any closing thoughts you have before we finish our interview for today?
Just be compassionate. That's kind of my thing is, whenever, whatever, to yourself and to everyone around you. And, just stay light is what I keep saying. Nothing gets taken away from you. If you've got it, you've got it. If you haven't, it'll come. Nothing is running away from you. So just be.
I love it. Thank you so much. And sorry, Joe, this happens sometimes. I like talk in the interview. I was telling Nipa beforehand, I was like, Joe probably won't talk a whole lot in this one because I'll just keep talking. But we trade off. He interviews people and I don't talk and it works out. But
Well, thank you so much. Thank you both so much for this opportunity. And I've loved doing this. I was nervous and I was like, what am I going to say? And is it going to be too much? But it's been like having coffee and just chatting. So this is great.
Well, thank you to everyone that's watching on Facebook Live. And we will be posting this episode on, our podcast, of course, as well. So thank you. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their weekend and good start to your week, Nipa, tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all. And thank you all for those who are watching.
Go forth and do better.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.